You ever have one of those moments when you realize your life just turned into one of those wild stories you only ever read about online? Yeah, that was me. Standing in my driveway watching the HOA president's face practically ignite when she saw my wife's brand new neon pink Porsche gleaming in the evening light. I mean, the color alone was enough to stop traffic. But it wasn't just about the car for her. Oh no, it was about control power, about someone daring to exist just a little too loud for the tiny little box she'd carved out for our neighborhood. I didn't know it then, but that look, that silent scream behind her eyes was just the opening act. 3 days later, I'd catch her on my security cameras breaking into my garage at 2:47 in the morning. Gloves, tools, the whole 9 yards trying to steal that Porsche. Wild. Right. But that was just chapter one. Before it was over, she'd fake her own attack hire lawyers to threaten us with a lawsuit that sounded like a ransom note for $250,000 and rally half the neighborhood against us with a campaign of online smear and public shaming. She was playing chess. What she didn't know was I'd already turned the board upside down. I guess if you're going to go to war with an HOA president, it helps if you're a creative director with a compulsive habit of documenting everything. Every vehicle, every entrance, every argument, all on camera. You never know when you'll need it, right? Cameras, audio, the law itself. I was going to make sure justice wasn't just done. It was going to be seen by everyone who'd ever been afraid of her. And let me tell you, there were a lot. So let me back up a sec. It all started the night I pulled into our driveway, 6:32 p.m. sharp on a Thursday, garage opener in hand, heart pounding because I'd been grinning like an idiot for 3 days straight. Wrapped up in a custom car cover that cost more than most people's rent was the reason why my wife Avery's dream come true. Avery, she's a surgeon, the kind that literally holds hearts in her hands. 12-hour shifts, lives, saved sleep, destroyed. She'd been promoted to lead cardiac surgeon at University Medical just 3 weeks before. Ever since her days as a ramen-fueled resident, she'd been dreaming out loud and impossible of a Porsche 911. Not just any Porsche either, she wanted it bold, convertible, and outrageously pink. I found it 2 states away, hunted it down like a holy grail. A Carrera convertible top-down in a color the manufacturer called electric magenta, but honestly, it was just neon pink, the kind of pink that'd make a peacock blush. When the salesman showed it to me, I busted out laughing. That's Avery, I thought. Unapologetic, joyful, impossible to ignore. The engine purred, then roared. I bought it, drove it home, parked it in the garage, spent the entire day lining up the surprise. That night, Avery got home after another endless shift. I could see the exhaustion in her shoulders as she pulled into the drive, hospital bag drooping in one hand. Triple bypass today, she told me that morning, patient coded twice. Brought him back both times. It's what she does, fights death and usually wins, but it eats her up. I met her at the car door, took her bag, kissed her forehead. Got something to show you. She gave me that tired smile, the one that says, I love you, but please God, just let me sit down. Can it wait till after wine? Nope, I said. Trust me, you're going to want to see this. We went to the garage. I hit the button. Door rolled up with that old mechanical rumble. I whipped the cover off in one smooth move, and the pink exploded into the room like sunrise. It glowed, bouncing off the concrete, the leather interior a soft cream that made the color seem even wilder. Avery put her hand over her mouth. And then she started crying the good kind when something you've wanted forever suddenly shows up real as rain. You remember that old showroom, I asked? She nodded, still lost in the pink. When I was a resident walking home past that Porsche dealer on 7th Street, that pink 911 in the window, I'd stop and stare, tell myself someday when I wasn't living on cafeteria food. She trailed off, running her fingers along the hood. Pinks for people who dare to live out loud, she whispered half to herself. How did you even find this? She finally asked. I grinned. Finding impossible things, that's kind of my thing, you know. She slipped into the driver's seat like she was coming home. "Start it," I said. She did. The engine came alive, that low, hungry growl filling the garage. Avery actually laughed a real belly-deep laugh, first one in weeks. "This is insane. This is too much." "No," I said, "this is exactly what you deserve, every bit of it." We'd bought the house in Meadowbrook Heights 5 years earlier. Big trees, nice lawns, that community feel. Folks took pride, and rules were everything. The HOA had a reputation, 89 pages of regulations, single-spaced. I'd read every word before we bought in because that's how I roll. The president, Vanessa Thornhill, was a legend. Strict, always re-elected tales of mailbox fines and shutter colors that were too warm. We were meticulous. Never a violation, not even a warning. Rules were rules, right? When they're fair, they work. But what I didn't understand yet was what happens when rules aren't about fairness, when they're just weapons in the hands of people who love power more than justice. That lesson started the next morning. Avery left for the hospital at 6:15, roof down, smiling as she pulled out in that pink Porsche. I was still in pajamas, coffee in hand, watching from the upstairs window. And that's when I saw Vanessa Thornhill out walking her little white poodle. She was 45, perfectly styled, blonde, $1,000 running outfit, always in a hurry, but never running. Her power came from that HOA presidency authority over 47 families, just enough to feel important. She stopped dead when she saw Avery's Porsche heading down the street. Mouth open, face turning red, I could see it from upstairs. The dog was tugging, but Vanessa wasn't moving. Then she pulled out her phone and started snapping pictures. Driveway, garage, house. That feeling, like ice water down your spine. I'd seen that look before, the one you get in business meetings when your competitor knows you've got the better pitch. It wasn't just surprise. It was rage and something else too, jealousy maybe. I made a mental note to check the HOA rules again. I did. House colors, fences, landscaping. Nothing about vehicles except no commercial vehicles. No RVs or boats visible from the street. No cars on blocks. Nothing about color, make, model. We owned our driveway. No way she can have a problem with this, I thought. I pushed it aside. We'd followed every rule. We were model citizens. What's a pink Porsche in the grand scheme, right? I went about my day shower, dressed down to my office. But that image of Vanessa on the sidewalk, phone out, didn't leave my head. It kept echoing, building up. And at 7:43 that night, when Avery pulled into the driveway, sun setting, and the pink almost on fire, Vanessa was there, waiting, just standing at the end of the drive. "Excuse me, is this your vehicle?" she called out. "All business." I stepped outside. "It's mine," Avery said, a little wary, still in her scrubs. "My husband got it for me." Vanessa's eyes ran over the car like she was scanning for nuclear waste. "I see. Did you perhaps consider how this would look in our neighborhood before you parked something like this here?" Her tone. I swear you'd think Avery had dropped a toxic waste barrel in the middle of the lawn. Avery looked at me uncertain. I stepped up. "Mrs. Thornhill, is there a problem?" She squared off, arms crossed. "Meadowbrook Heights has standards. Understated elegance. This," she waved at the Porsche like it was a crime scene, "is neither understated nor elegant." "It's a Porsche 911 Carrera," I said even. "One of the most respected sports cars ever built." "It's neon pink," she snapped. "It's garish, attention-seeking, inappropriate." Avery got out, joy already dimming. "I'm sorry if it bothers you, but it's just a car. I've wanted one since—" "I don't care what you've wanted," Vanessa cut in. "I care about maintaining property values and community standards. I'll be reviewing our HOA covenant. If there's any provision that covers this, you'll be hearing from me." And with that, she spun around and left Poodle trailing behind, leaving us standing there in the last light of day, with a car that suddenly felt a whole lot less like a dream and a whole lot more like a target. Avery looked at me. "Can she do that? Make us get rid of it?" I put my arm around her. "No. I read those rules top to bottom. There's nothing about vehicle colors. She's just being a bully." But the truth, I was already running every clause of that covenant through my head looking for loopholes because people like Vanessa always find a way to twist the rules. She wanted power, and she didn't care how she got it. That night sleep wouldn't come. Around 11:30, I got up for a drink. Happened to look out the window, and there she was outside our house, taking more pictures, phone out, just standing there in the glow of the street lamp. She walked around, tried the garage door handle. Locked, thankfully. But she tried. That sent ice down my spine. This wasn't about property values anymore. This was personal. This was obsession. I checked the security cameras. All four were rolling. I pulled up the street view. There was Vanessa, 11:37 p.m., perfectly framed. Saved it to the cloud, made backups, labeled the folder evidence. Didn't know what I'd need it for yet, but my gut told me this was just the beginning. The next morning, I called the lawyer down the street, Donovan Pierce, the guy Vanessa had slapped with a bogus tree violation. If Vanessa wanted a war, I was going to make sure I had every legal weapon available. I watched Vanessa finally leave, and I stood there for a long time staring at that Porsche through the garage window. Beautiful, defiant, and apparently public enemy number one. What Vanessa didn't know yet, I didn't just build stories for a living. I built them with timestamps, with receipts, with proof. She thought her title made her untouchable. But me, I had patience, I had cameras, and I knew one thing for certain. People who abuse power eventually hang themselves with it. You just got to give them the rope and make sure you're recording. The letter arrived 48 hours later, and let me tell you, it was a master class in passive-aggressive bureaucracy. Not email, not a friendly knock, nope. This thing showed up in our mailbox, cream-colored envelope, the HOA return address, all official names printed in a font that practically screamed, "I dare you to ignore me." I stood there in my driveway, sunlight bouncing off that neon Porsche and the garage envelope in hand, feeling like I was about to be served a lawsuit on a silver platter. Opened it up and had to laugh. It was so professional, so polished, and so completely unhinged. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Cole, it has come to the attention of the Meadowbrook Heights HOA Board that your property is currently in violation of Section 7.3.4 of our Community Covenant. Specifically, your vehicle displays colors and styling that constitute a visual distraction and ostentatious display inconsistent with the aesthetic standards of our neighborhood. You are hereby assessed a fine of $500 and given 7 days to remedy this violation by either repainting the vehicle to an approved neutral color or removing it from the property permanently. Failure to comply will result in additional fines and potential legal action. Signed, Vanessa Thornhill, HOA President. I almost choked on my coffee. 7.3.4. I knew those rules backward and forward. 7.1 commercial vehicles, 7.2 RVs and boats, 7.3 inoperable vehicles. There was no 7.3.4. She'd literally made up a rule, assigned it a fancy number, and slapped an official-looking letterhead on it, betting we'd just go along. I showed it to Avery over breakfast. She was still in scrubs on her second piece of toast, tired but curious. She read it, face going from confusion to anger, to something worse, that shrinking feeling like you've done something wrong when you know you haven't. "Maybe I should just get it repainted," she said, voice small. I shook my head. "Avery, this rule doesn't exist. She invented it. Section 7.3.4 isn't in our covenant. I checked twice." Her eyes widened. "She just made it up. Can she do that?" "No. Presidents can't just invent rules. Any new rule has to be proposed, voted on. That's state law. What she's doing is harassment." Avery looked at the Porsche through the kitchen window. "I just wanted a car I loved. I didn't want a war." I kissed her forehead. "You're not starting a war. You bought a car. She's the one who decided that was a problem." Avery left for work, and I went straight to Vanessa's house, which, by the way, was also the HOA office, her dining room decked out like she was running the Pentagon. She answered in her country club best smile tight. "Mr. Cole, what can I do for you?" I held up the letter. "I'd like to discuss this violation notice." She led me inside, sat it behind her desk like a judge. I stayed standing. I've reviewed our covenant. Section 7 ends at 7.3. There's no 7.34. She didn't even blink. That's the implicit regulation, the spirit of the rule. Everyone understands that. No, I replied, everyone follows written rules, not whatever you decide the spirit is. She leaned back, mask slipping, just a bit irritation showing. I'm the HOA president. I have the authority to interpret and enforce our standards as I see fit. I shook my head. Actually, you don't. State HOA law says new rules require a proposal comment period and a vote. You can't just make them up. Her jaw clenched. Are you suggesting I'm acting improperly? I'm saying this violation notice is based on a rule that doesn't exist. The air in the room dropped about 20 degrees. She stood up, voice icy. Let me be clear, Mr. Cole. I have managed this HOA for 3 years. I have maintained property values and will not let you and your wife undermine that with your circus car. There it was. Not about rules. About pride. About someone daring to exist outside her little kingdom. I'd like to see the documentation, I said. Meeting minutes, the vote, all that. That's confidential HOA business. State law says all HOA meetings and votes have to be documented and available to homeowners on request. So I'm requesting. She was visibly angry now. There will be a board meeting in 3 weeks. You can address your concerns then. 3 weeks. Your letter gives us 7 days with a $500 fine. That's correct. And if you don't comply, the fine increases to $1,000 a week. I stared at her, honestly stunned. You know this is illegal, right? Textbook HOA abuse. She walked around her desk, getting right up in my space. What I know is fighting the HOA will cost you more than $500. My husband knows very good lawyers. Judges. Connections you couldn't possibly match. She smiled coldly. I understand your wife is a surgeon at University Medical. Prominent position. I'm sure she wouldn't want any complications that might reflect poorly on her professionally. Small communities talk. I had to bite my tongue. The threat was clear. Avery's career, our home, everything we cared about. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Thornhill, I said, and left before I said something I'd regret. Because here's the thing. You don't beat bullies by matching their rage. You gather evidence. You build a case. You use the system against them. That evening, Vanessa made her next move a post in the private Meadowbrook Heights neighborhood group. Within 10 minutes, 3 neighbors sent me screenshots. The post showed Avery's Porsche captioned, "Community members, it pains me to bring this up publicly, but some newer residents seem to believe Meadowbrook Heights is appropriate for vehicles that are aggressively ostentatious. This pink monstrosity represents everything our HOA was designed to prevent the degradation of our refined aesthetic by those who prioritize flash over class. The HOA is taking action, but I wanted you all to be aware. Our property values depend on all of us maintaining standards." It blew up. 23 likes in an hour, 15 comments, some supportive, some vicious. Thank you for protecting our neighborhood. Who drives a car like that in a family neighborhood? Classless. But there were quieter comments too. Is there actually a rule against this? Seems like a pretty car. Why does it matter? Those were buried quick with responses about how it's not about diversity, it's about community standards. Vanessa was drawing the battle lines, making it us versus them, casting us as the troublemakers. When Avery came home at 9 p.m., she saw the post scrolled through the comments, face getting paler by the second. "They hate me," she whispered. "Half the neighborhood hates me because of a car." I took her phone, set it down, pulled her into a hug. They don't hate you. They don't even know you. Vanessa's manipulating people, and I promise you tomorrow I'm talking to Donovan. We're documenting every single thing she does, every threat, every made-up rule. We're going to fight this, not with anger, with evidence. Avery looked up, scared. What if she wins? She has more power, more connections. I thought about Vanessa trying our garage door at midnight, about that rage behind her smile. People like her always overreach. When they cross that line, I'll make sure every second is documented. That night, I opened a new file, Vanessa Thornhill Timeline of Harassment. Every incident, every date, every screenshot, every scrap of proof. Midnight photography, the violation letter, the career threat, the social media post. I started logging it all. I had a feeling we'd need every bit of it. Sunday morning, I called Donovan Pierce, the lawyer, 4 houses down. We'd said hi at barbecues, but never more than that. I told him why I was calling. There was a long pause, then he laughed, not a happy laugh, but the kind you make when you know exactly what I was going through. So you're Vanessa's latest target. Welcome to the club. Come over. I'll make coffee. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at his kitchen table, him pulling out a file folder thick with documents. 2 years ago, Vanessa cited me for trees supposedly over the height limit. I'm a lawyer. I hired a surveyor. Trees were exactly at the limit. She changed the violation, said the trees cast excessive shade, a safety hazard. Also not in the rules. She fined me $2,000. When I refused, she threatened to put a lien on my house. I paid because fighting her would have cost more in legal fees than the fine. That's her strategy, make it cheaper to comply than fight. I told him about the pink Porsche, the fake section 7.3.4, the threat to Avery. He nodded. She did the same to a family down the street. The wife's a teacher. Vanessa implied the HOA drama might reach the school board. It's psychological warfare. Make people feel like their entire life's at risk over something trivial. He poured more coffee. She's been president for 3 years. Ran unopposed because anyone who challenged her got buried in violation notices. She's built a culture of fear. Most people just comply. But some don't, I said. He nodded. A few. Former board member tried to question her spending, got pushed out. There's probably 20 households with grudges, but too scared to go public. He leaned in. You want to fight, you need 3 things: documentation, allies, and understanding the legal framework. State HOA law is strict. Vanessa's been operating in the gray because no one's challenged her. If she keeps going, she'll cross a line. I spent 2 hours learning everything I could about HOA law, public records, voting, rules, how any regulation changes required a 60% homeowner vote, how meeting minutes had to be public, how financials had to be filed every year. Donovan showed me evidence she hadn't filed, state-required reports in 18 months, hadn't posted meeting minutes. That's a violation of state law. If you press, she's in trouble. Why didn't you go after her, I asked. He shrugged. Because I paid and moved on. I'm not a litigator. But you're a creative director. You know how to build a narrative, and you document everything. Vanessa's already escalating. That garage door thing, that's trespassing. I drove straight from his house to an electronics store, dropped $800 on pro-grade cameras, 4K night vision, motion detection, cloud backup. Spent the afternoon on ladders covering every angle of our property: garage, driveway, back door, side gate. Set up phone alerts for any motion detected between 10:00 p.m. and 6:00 a.m. While I was out front, the former board member walked by, dog in tow. New security system, she asked. Yeah, I replied, just being careful. She lowered her voice. I heard about your car. Vanessa pushed me off the board for asking about HOA funds. 15 grand went to landscaping, but no real work ever done. She claimed I was biased because my brother owns a landscaping company 3 states away. Total nonsense, but enough to get me out. She smiled grimly. I kept everything. Emails, records, minutes, all of it. I'll send you a link tonight. That night I opened the cloud folder she sent. Dozens of docs, emails, financial records, meeting minutes from before Vanessa stopped publishing them, photos of ridiculous violation notices, a mailbox 1 shade off black, a wreath on a door, a garden gnome. I started building a spreadsheet, every household she'd fined, threatened, or harassed. By midnight, I had 22 names, almost half the neighborhood. Power. I realized only works if everyone's scared and alone. But together, we had a majority. The only question, could I convince them to stand up? Before bed, I checked every camera feed, every alert. The Porsche was safe. Everything was locked. Through the night vision, that pink looked almost gray. But I knew come morning it'd blaze out again, refusing to hide. And that's what we were going to do too. No more hiding, no more shrinking. We were going to fight smart, careful, and together. Vanessa had power, sure, but power without legitimacy That's just tyranny waiting to collapse. The first night I set up the new security system, I slept like a guy expecting trouble. Light, restless every creak, setting my nerves on edge. Then, at 2:47 a.m., my phone lit up with an alert, motion-detected garage camera. My heart pounded so loud I almost missed the soft chime of the app. I fumbled for the phone, thumbed the screen, and there she was, Vanessa Thornhill in my garage for real, not a bad dream. She was dressed head to toe in black hoodie up latex gloves on, holding what looked like a slim gym or pry bar. No mistaking her face, not even in night vision. She was standing next to Avery's Porsche tool in hand, frozen for a second like a raccoon caught in a flashlight beam. I shook Avery awake. "She's in the garage," I whispered. "Vanessa, right now." Avery sat up, confused, hair wild, eyes wide. What, in our garage? I was already pulling on jeans and dialing 911. The dispatcher answered fast. I gave our address, explained the situation. "Yes, the intruder is still on the property. I have her on camera right now." "No, I haven't confronted her yet." "Yes, please send police." The dispatcher told me to stay inside, that officers were close, but I couldn't just sit and wait, not while Vanessa was out there in my garage, maybe trying to steal my wife's car. I opened the camera app's two-way audio and spoke as calm as I could. Mrs. Thornhill stepped away from the vehicle. Her reaction was priceless. She jumped, nearly dropped the tool, spun around scanning the ceiling for the voice, then spotted the camera. Her face, ghostly and pale, twisted through a mix of shock, fear, and something wild that looked a lot like rage. She tried to talk voice tinny through my phone speaker. "I can explain. I wasn't..." She started stammering. "You broke into my garage at 2:47 a.m., I said. "You're wearing gloves. You're carrying a burglary tool. The police are on their way." That hit her. She glanced at the garage door, calculating escape, but she didn't run. Instead, she snapped, shouted at the camera. "This vehicle is in violation. I have the authority as HOA president to remove property that violates community standards. This isn't theft. This is enforcement." I just let her talk. Every second was going straight to the cloud. "You have no authority to break into someone's home," I said. "That's not enforcement. That's burglary." Her hands were shaking now. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "This car, this pink abomination, it's destroying everything we've built here. People think they can do whatever they want. Paint their cars ridiculous colors, ignore standards. I had to do something." Sirens cut her off, close, getting closer. She panicked, dropped the tool, darted for the side door. By then, I was already at the front phone, still recording. Police rolled up red and blue lights, lighting the neighborhood like Christmas. 2 officers, then 4. One was the cop who'd given us his card at the neighborhood watch meeting. I flagged him down. Intruders in our garage side door trying to leave. 2 officers sprinted around back, shouting commotion. Vanessa's voice, shrill and desperate, echoed, "I'm the HOA president. I have the right." A minute later, they marched her out, hands cuffed behind her back, face streaked with tears and fury. The officer I knew walked over, calm but serious. "Mr. Cole, you called this in?" "Yeah." "She was breaking into my wife's car. I have it all on video, her, the break-in, the whole conversation." He watched the footage, brow climbing higher with each second. Then he turned to Vanessa, still in cuffs. "Ma'am, can you explain what you were doing in this garage at 2:47 a.m.? She tried to hold her ground. "I'm the HOA president. That vehicle violates our covenant. I have the right to enforce rules to remove violations. This is official business." He shook his head. "No HOA in this state can break into private property or confiscate vehicles. That's burglary, not enforcement." She pointed at me, wild-eyed. "The covenant section 7.3.4 clearly states..." I cut in, voice tired but firm. "There is no section 7.3.4. She made it up." The officer looked between us, then back at Vanessa. "So you broke into a garage to steal a car over a rule you invented." By now, neighbors were up, porch lights flicking on people in pajamas and robes peeking out. Some wandered over, sleepy and curious, forming small clusters. Vanessa looked around, saw the audience, and for the first time her mask really cracked. "I want my lawyer," she yelled, voice cracking. The officers read her Miranda rights as she sobbed. She tried to talk over them to explain to justify, but nobody was listening. The scene was being documented from every angle. Photos of the tool, the scratch marks on the side door, the Porsche gleaming under the garage lights. As the patrol car pulled away, Vanessa in the back, the lawyer from down the street sidled up next to me, watching the drama unfold. Honestly, he murmured, I didn't think she'd go that far. Knew she was controlling, but actual burglary. I kept my phone rolling as neighbors started gathering around me, asking what happened, why the HOA president was being arrested. I gave them the short version. She broke into our garage, tried to steal Avery's car, all because she invented a rule and wanted to enforce it herself. That's when the stories started. She fined us last year for a mailbox that was supposedly the wrong shade of black. Cost us $300 to fix, someone said. She tried to get us written up for leaving our Christmas lights up a day past the deadline, another neighbor added. The dam was breaking right there at 3 a.m. The fear that kept everyone silent was crumbling. Avery, wrapped in her robe, came outside and stood by my side. Is it over? She asked, voice small. I looked at her, looked at the dark street, the porch lights, the pink Porsche, now a crime scene centerpiece. No, I admitted, it's going to get worse before it gets better. She won't give up quietly. And I was right. The next morning, 8:15 a.m., a courier in a suit delivered a letter to my front door. This time it wasn't from Vanessa. It was from her lawyers, Thornon and Associates, in an envelope thick enough to be used as a doorstop. I had to sign for it like I was receiving a subpoena. I opened it while the courier waited, hands shaking, not with fear, but just sheer disbelief. Vanessa, who'd just made bail for attempted burglary, was now suing us for $250,000. I read it twice just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The claims were creative to say the least. False imprisonment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, malicious prosecution. The letter alleged that we'd trapped her in the garage, orchestrated a conspiracy, damaged her reputation, destroyed her standing in the community. Demands included a public apology, immediate removal of the pink Porsche, and $250,000 in damages. I showed the letter to Avery when she got home from her morning rounds. She looked at the number $250,000, and her face went white. Jameson, we don't have that kind of money, even if we sold everything. We're not paying, I said, calm as I could. This is a slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation, designed to intimidate us into silence, to make the cost of fighting higher than the cost of giving in. But the fear was real. That's how bullies win, make you feel like the threat is bigger than your courage. While we were still processing that, Vanessa launched her next attack, a social media blitz, this time way beyond the neighborhood group. She went regional community forums, HOA networks, even local news Facebook pages. Her posts all told the same story. Dedicated, HOA president falsely accused, persecuted by newcomers, victimized by neighbors with a grudge. Photos of her at charity events, stock photos of pastel-painted homes, and of course Avery's Porsche front and center, called a neon eyesore and a danger to property values. Within hours, it had hundreds of shares. The comments were a circus. Some believed her, some questioned her, some defended the pink car as a right of personal property, but a lot just loved the drama. And then came the emails. Colleagues from the hospital administration thought you should know subject lines, anonymous forwards of Vanessa's posts, some supportive, some not. Avery showed me hands shaking. This is what she meant about reputations being fragile. She's trying to ruin my career because we wouldn't repaint a car. I knew it was coming, but it still stung. I took a breath. Time to fight fire with evidence. I put together a video. No fancy editing, just facts. Security camera footage of Vanessa breaking in, audio of her enforcing rules, police body cam of her arrest. Screenshot of the HOA covenant, no section 7.3.4, no rule about car color, just cold hard truth. I posted it everywhere she posted her lies. Caption, here's what actually happened. Decide for yourself. The shift was instant. Comments started flipping. Wait, she broke into their house. There's no rule against pink cars. That's burglary, not enforcement. Local news picked up the story, HOA president arrested trying to steal a pink Porsche over a rule she made up. It had everything suburban drama, abuse of power, and absurdly bright car at the center of it all. By nightfall, we were trending locally not as villains, but as the family who stood up. My lawyer neighbor called that evening. It's bigger than you think. People are coming out of the woodwork. I've had 4 neighbors contact me with stories about Vanessa. They want to know if there's a way to remove her permanently. Can you help organize a meeting? I checked my spreadsheet. 22 households with grievances. Reached out, set a date. That night, a former board member texted me, Vanessa hasn't filed HOA paperwork in almost 2 years. Financial statements, meeting minutes, annual reports, all missing. Not just negligence, that's possible embezzlement. I added it to the file. Burglary harassment invented rules, unfiled reports, missing money. This wasn't just about a pink car anymore. It was about a pattern, a system. One person's petty tyranny and the way it spread through a whole neighborhood, making people small, scared, and compliant. Avery found me at the kitchen table that night, drowning in papers, coffee, and my laptop's glow. What if fighting her becomes all we do, she asked. What if this consumes us? It won't, I said, because we're not doing it for revenge. We're doing it for everyone she bullied. For every person who got fined for the color of their shutters or the height of their trees, or the whim of one woman who mistook authority for wisdom. She looked at the evidence spread out in front of us. Okay, but we do this together, not just you, we're a team. I reached across, squeezed her hand. Always have been. The next evening, 18 households packed into Donovan's living room. File folders everywhere. Phones out, documents ready. People who'd lived in fear for years suddenly sharing stories, fines, threats, gossip campaigns, phony rules, unaccounted funds. The pattern was clear. Vanessa targeted anyone who stood out, anyone who questioned her, anyone who had something she envied. The financial records told their own story. $30,000 in HOA funds missing or unaccounted for. Every time I asked, there was an excuse, the former board member explained. The accountant changed firms. The files crashed. When I pushed, she forced me out. This was no longer just HOA politics. This was criminal. We left that meeting with a plan. Donovan would file complaints with the county. I would compile every piece of evidence into a dossier for the district attorney. We'd prepare for an emergency HOA meeting to remove Vanessa from the board once and for all. But Vanessa wasn't done fighting. Saturday morning. 3 days after our coalition met, my phone went off like it was New Year's Eve calls, texts, neighborhood app, notifications stacking up so fast the screen lagged. Something big had happened, something so dramatic. Even the people who usually kept their heads down were buzzing. I checked the Meadowbrook Heights group first. There it was, a new post from Vanessa, time-stamped 4:30 a.m. It showed her Mercedes driver's side window, shattered glass everywhere, and a note on the dashboard. The caption was classic Vanessa, pure victim card. I am being terrorized by the Cole family and their supporters. Last night, vandals attacked my vehicle and left this threatening message. I have filed a police report and am afraid for my safety. This is what happens when HOA boards try to maintain standards. Violent retaliation from those who refuse to follow rules. A photo of the note, block letters, all caps, black marker. Karen, go back to hating pink cars. It looked threatening, the kind of thing meant to rile people up, make us look like unhinged villains. But something felt off. I stared at the photo, zoomed in details jumping out at me like they'd been waiting for someone to notice. Glass shards on the ground, sure, but also scattered inside the car, on the seat, the dash. Thing is, when a car window gets smashed from the outside, the glass falls in. When it's broken from inside, you get a little of both. My gut twisted. I took screenshots and sent them to the cop who'd arrested Vanessa, adding, something's off. Can you check this out? I double-checked our own security cameras, 4 feeds, every angle, all night. Neither Avery nor I left the property between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., not once. Footage was clear. No cars down our street. No sign of anyone coming or going. Alibi bulletproof, time-stamped, ready for the cops. The officer called within the hour. We're investigating the vandalism, but between you and me, it looks staged. Wrong glass, pattern notes too perfect, no smudge, no weathering. And get this, the neighborhood security cameras were turned off between 2 and 5 a.m. Guess who has admin access? I didn't have to ask. Vanessa. Bingo! We're pulling her phone records. If she accessed the cameras during that window, it'll look very suspicious that her car got vandalized at the same time. This was next level even for her. Faking a crime, trying to frame us for harassment. Desperate people do desperate things when the walls start closing in. I posted my own update to the neighborhood group. Short, calm, no drama. My wife and I were home all night. Security footage proves we never left. We had nothing to do with any vandalism. However, I'm concerned that neighborhood security cameras were disabled during the exact hours this occurred. Why would the HOA president turn off security cameras at 2 a.m.? Why would a window smashed from the outside have glass all over the inside? These are questions I hope the police will answer. That post changed everything. People started thinking for themselves again. A neighbor who worked in insurance commented, "I've processed hundreds of auto vandalism claims. This brake pattern doesn't match an outside attack. The note's too clean for a car left open all night. Something's not right." By noon, the narrative had shifted. Neighbors who'd once been silent started asking real questions. The tide was turning. Police called me on Monday morning for a statement. I brought the security footage, showed them the whole night, uninterrupted, no movement. The detective asked me, why would someone write, "Go back to hating pink cars" as a threat? I shrugged. My wife has a pink Porsche. Vanessa has been harassing us about it for weeks. Maybe someone thought referencing that would make the note seem connected to us. He nodded, taking notes. We're doing a full investigation. Handwriting analysis on the note, checking Mrs. Thornhill's phone logs. If someone faked this, there'll be consequences. I left the station with a weird sense of hope. It finally felt like the system was starting to work. That night, the former board member texted me more records, HOA insurance claims expenses, cross-referenced with actual work performed. There were huge discrepancies, $15,000 for emergency landscaping. No one remembered $8,000 for security upgrades. The security company had no record of $5,000 for legal fees that the HOA's own lawyer said never happened. Vanessa had been stealing for years, and now it was all unraveling. 2 days later, the detective called back. We finished our analysis. The handwriting on the note matches Mrs. Thornhill's insurance paperwork. Glass break is consistent with force from inside the vehicle. Her phone accessed the security camera admin at 1:57 a.m., turning them off. No alibi. We'll be arresting her for insurance fraud, filing a false report and obstruction. I hung up, hands shaking. Not fear this time, adrenaline, the thrill of seeing justice closing in. That evening, I watched the news as Vanessa was led out of her house in cuffs again. This time for fraud, not just for a midnight break-in. Avery stood beside me, hand on my shoulder. She really did all that she whispered. Smashed her own window, wrote a note, tried to blame us. She's desperate, I said. Cornered people will burn everything down before they admit defeat. But even as she was hauled off again, her lawyers kept spinning. They claimed police harassment vendettas, false accusations, a campaign of persecution against their client. They threatened to countersue for millions, issued press releases, and bizarrely called for my arrest for public endangerment. It was time for the final move. Thursday night, the emergency HOA meeting, I spent the whole day assembling everything. Videos, documents, emails, testimony, the audio recording I'd gotten the day before. See, before that meeting, I'd emailed Vanessa, asking her to meet for coffee, off the record private, just the two of us. We both have legal trouble now, I wrote. We're both paying lawyers. Maybe we can settle before this gets even worse. She bit, of course, her ego wouldn't let her walk away. We met at a quiet little cafe, me with my phone in my jacket pocket, audio app running. She sat across from me, mask of confidence barely holding. "Let's make this quick," she snapped. "What do you want?" I just looked at her, then asked, "Why was it really just about the pink car?" She let out a bitter little laugh. "It wasn't about the pink. It was about people like you moving in and thinking the rules don't apply. Thinking you can just do what you want. There are standards. You broke them." I pushed her gently, but I pushed. But there was no rule. You made up section 7.34. She snapped, "It's an implicit standard. Your wife's car is a circus. It makes the whole neighborhood look cheap." I kept my voice calm. "So you broke into my garage to enforce a rule that didn't exist." "I didn't break in," she hissed. "I entered to enforce standards. That's my authority. I was going to drive that pink monstrosity out and dump it somewhere it belonged in some trashy lot where nobody cares about aesthetics." "And the vandalism?" I asked. "Your car the note." Her hands started to shake. "I needed people to see I was the victim," she said quietly. "I needed them to stop questioning me. Stop acting like I was the one in the wrong when all I did was try to maintain standards." She realized what she'd said too late. I pressed the button to save the audio, uploaded it to 3 different cloud services, sent copies to Donovan and myself. Bulletproof. Saturday at 6 p.m., the HOA emergency meeting at the community center. 41 of 47 households showed up, almost everyone. Vanessa tried to carry on like nothing had happened, calling the meeting to order, accusing us of baseless accusations against your elected HOA leadership. The lawyer stood up. "We're here to vote on removing you from the board, Mrs. Thornhill, for criminal activity, financial mismanagement, abuse of authority." Vanessa protested. "You can't remove me. I was elected. You need grounds." "We have grounds," Donovan replied. He nodded at me. I stood up, plugged my laptop into the projector. "I have evidence," I said, voice echoing in the packed room. Video of the break-in. Audio of Vanessa's confession. Police body cam footage. Financial records showing the $30,000 missing. Documentation of every abuse of power for 3 years. By the end, Vanessa was crying real tears. Not angry ones, but the kind you cry when you know it's really finally over. She tried to shout down the evidence that recording's illegal, but Donovan shut her down. "It's perfectly legal, and even if it wasn't, we have enough without it." He called the vote. 40 hands went up. Only Vanessa stayed down. Motion carried. Vanessa Thornhill removed from the HOA effective immediately. Civil suit for stolen funds filed. All evidence forwarded to the DA. She stormed out, but the officers were waiting. 3rd arrest this time for the confession, no bail given her repeat offenses. 3 weeks later, I watched her accept a plea deal in court. 18 months probation for attempted burglary, $15,000 in fines for insurance fraud, $5,000 for false reports, 2 years concurrent probation for harassment, a permanent ban from holding any HOA position for 10 years, restitution of $30,000 to the HOA, 200 hours of community service. The judge told her point blank, "You abused your position, destroyed reputations, committed crimes. The only reason you're not in prison is the victims agreed justice was better served this way." Outside, Avery squeezed my hand. "It's really over," she whispered. "The legal part, yeah," I said. "The neighborhood, that's just starting to heal." The new board moved fast, returned $23,000 in fines to 11 families, published financials online, changed the rules so nobody could ever weaponize implicit standards again. Hosted a barbecue, the first in 3 years, without Vanessa's shadow looming. People brought garden gnomes, painted shutters, bold colors. Even a guy who'd always wanted flamingos in his yard set them out with a big goofy grin. As Avery and I left, neighbors thanked us. "You stood up when the rest of us were too afraid." The man whose daughter had cried over painting her window trim purple hugged me. "We're painting it this weekend. Because sometimes bullies lose." And I realized as Avery and I sat together in the garage that night, neon pink Porsche between us like a trophy, that it had never really been about the car. It was about the right to exist loudly, colorfully, unapologetically, without having to ask anyone's permission. We'd won. But more than that, we'd shown everyone in that neighborhood and a whole lot of people watching online that proof beats power every time. You just have to be willing to document the fall. When Vanessa's world finally collapsed, you could feel the shift not just on our street, but in people's posture and how they looked each other in the eye again. It was like some invisible weight had been lifted, and the air was new, sweet, full of possibilities people hadn't even considered for years. Avery and I got more emails and calls than we ever expected. Some were from neighbors, thank yous, apology stories about fines, threats, little humiliations they'd lived with for so long they'd almost forgotten what it felt like to breathe easy in their own homes. But more messages came from outside Meadowbrook Heights people in HOA nightmares all across the country who'd seen the video, read the news, or stumble onto the story through word of mouth. You gave us a template, they said. You proved you could stand up, document every abuse, and win. That was the wildest part, realizing it wasn't just about us anymore. This tiny pink Porsche rebellion had become something bigger, something people latched onto when they needed proof that power wasn't absolute. The neighborhood itself started to heal almost overnight. The new HOA board, led by the ex-board member who'd collected all the receipts with Donovan as vice president, became everything the old regime wasn't: transparent, approachable, even a little bit fun. Their first act was to call a general meeting, open mic, no agenda, just people sharing what kind of community they actually wanted to live in. One by one, folks got up and confessed things they'd been too embarrassed or afraid to say: before the mailbox fines, the secret repaintings, the out-of-code lawn gnomes hidden in closets or garages for years. The old man who'd been cited for his non-standard garden roses brought a bouquet for the new board president. She cried right there on the spot. Someone started a tradition of freedom cookies. Every time you broke a silly rule for the first time, like putting up a colorful wind spinner or painting your front door lime green, you brought cookies to share at the next HOA meeting. The room got very fat very quickly. Me, I was busy. Between helping the board fielding requests for our documentation system and working my real job, it was a lot. But it was good. The kind of tired you feel after running a marathon, not losing a fight. Avery seemed lighter than she had in years. That first week she drove the Porsche with the top down every day, music cranked even when the weather was a little too cold for it. Neighbors waved, even ones who'd been skeptical. Some came up and apologized for not standing up sooner. Avery forgave them all. That's just who she is. One afternoon, the guy who'd always wanted flamingos in his yard stopped by with a six-pack. You know, he said, I almost gave up and moved because of her. Couldn't stand the way every day felt like a test I was doomed to fail. You guys reminded us it's okay to be a little weird, a little loud, so thank you. Word spread fast. The local news did a follow-up piece, the pink Porsche that broke the HOA president. National outlets started calling. I turned most down, but Avery did one interview just once, saying it was never about the car. It was about reminding people that rules are supposed to protect us, not punish us for being ourselves. That got quoted a lot. I watched the clip on my phone late one night and felt proud and a little stunned too, if I'm honest. I spent a few weekends putting together a free guide, just as promised, step-by-step instructions for documenting harassment, fighting HOA overreach, building a coalition. I made templates for incident logs, evidence folders, email threads. I even shot a short explainer video, me in the garage, the Porsche glowing in the background. I posted everything online. Within a month, hundreds of people downloaded it, dozens reached out with follow-ups, photos of board meetings, news that their own HOA presidents had suddenly resigned. We'd started a ripple that was turning into a wave. The legal stuff faded slowly but surely. Vanessa's lawyers tried a few more stunts, filed motions, threatened appeals, tried to get evidence tossed. But the recordings, the video, the mountain of documentation, it was airtight. The judge didn't budge, the DA didn't flinch, and eventually even her lawyers stopped answering calls. Her restitution payments started coming in small and grudging at first. The board used the first chunk to throw a block party. The whole neighborhood showed up, even people from the next subdivision over. Kids drew pink cars in chalk on the sidewalk, old folks brought out secret family recipes, and someone rigged up a tiny electric Porsche for the kids to drive up and down the block. At one point, a new neighbor, someone who'd moved in during all the chaos, pulled me aside. You really think this'll last? That things won't just go back to the way they were? I looked around. Avery chatting with 3 families about gardening. The lawyer grilling burgers. The ex-board member finally relaxing laughter echoing off every porch. I thought about the files I'd archived. The guide people were still downloading the fact that now, at least people knew the power they had. Yeah, I said. I think so. Not because of any one person, but because now everyone's seen what happens when you stand up, when you show your receipts, when you refuse to be afraid. There were setbacks, of course, rumors, little squabbles, one guy who kept insisting maybe some rules were good after all. But he was drowned out by the sound of neighbors finally actually talking to each other, planning projects, offering to help repaint a fence plant, a tree fix up a porch swing. That was real progress. As spring rolled in, things changed in small but meaningful ways. Lawns got a little wilder, mailboxes a little more individual. Kids played in the street, chalking out hopscotch courses and bright pink cars without looking over their shoulders. People left their porch lights on a little longer just in case someone wanted to stop by for a chat. Avery and I finally sat down one night months later on our front steps, watching the sun set behind the neighborhood. The Porsche, still neon, still bold, sat in the driveway gleaming. She nudged me. Do you regret any of it? The fight, the stress, the hours. I thought about it, about every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every surge of anger and fear and eventually relief. No, I said quietly but certain. If we hadn't done it, who would have? Besides, I think I finally get why you wanted the pink Porsche. It's not just a car. It's a flag, a line in the sand, a reminder that being different isn't a crime. It's the reason life is worth living. She smiled the kind of smile that makes everything else fade. We sat in silence for a long time, just listening to the sound of our own little revolution, still echoing somewhere out there beyond the lawns and mailboxes and garden gnomes, reminding anyone who needed to hear it proof beats power every single time. And in Meadowbrook Heights, at least, nobody was ever going to forget it.